And welcome back, everyone, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I say welcome back because I know you just listened to our last few episodes and you wanted more. So, hey, you came back for more. We have a little more for you. That's right. We always have more for you here on the Podcaster Nation. My name is Rory Paquette. I am, as always, your very grateful host. Love this podcast. Love this community. Love this job. This is what I get to do for a living. It's absolutely amazing. You folks are just amazing yourselves for turning out the way you have, for the listens, the subscribes, the comments, the forwards, the shares. Folks, if you're not out there doing what you're doing, I can't sit here and do what I'm doing. So I really do appreciate all of it. I'm grateful for all of it, and I truly feel blessed. Let's get rolling with this. This is the podcast, folks. That is about podcasters. It's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. This is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So, without any further ado, I know we all hate that phrase, but I'm going to have a little coffee real quick. I'll be drinking that throughout the episode. Folks, I want you to settle in for a minute. You know, if you're listening to this, more than likely you're a podcaster. And if you're not a podcaster, maybe you're thinking about becoming one, or, hey, maybe you're just a friend of the program. And that's okay too. But if you are actually a fellow podcaster out there and you're listening to this today, sit back in your chair, grab a cup of coffee, and let's just have a conversation. It's not going to take very long, but I just want to talk to you today. This isn't one of those big, hey, I've got 5 points that I want to cover, and here's point number one, click, 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 point number two. It's just a talk. And I want to prove a point today. And I want all of you to just kind of come along for the ride if you can. So if you're in your car, sit back, turn the volume up a little so you can hear it. Sit back and relax, take a deep breath. If you're, at home, hey, get that cup of Joe. Whatever it is you're drinking. I mean, hey, I don't know what time it is when you're listening to this. So if it's time for a scotch, go for it. Do what you got to do. I am hitting some really fine coffee this morning, and my sponsor actually on my other show. And I just wanted to, like I said, have this conversation. The third part of our Be a Better Podcaster series is today. And there's a couple things I want to cover. The most important theme of the day is that you're the boss. You are in charge. No one can tell you what to do with your podcast. Nobody. Not even a little. So often I talk to podcasters about different things, different ideas, different options. And I hear, if I had $1 for every time I heard a podcaster start their response to me by saying, well, what I've heard is, or, well, what everybody else does, or my favorite, well, wait a minute, don't you have to? ... There are a lot of these preconceived notions in podcasting, okay? And some of it is because everybody's an expert. Everybody. All right. I'm going to caution you on that real quick while we're sitting here having a cup of coffee together. If somebody's out there telling you exactly what you should and shouldn't do, and they're, talking about charging you money to, help you out, and they're offering, this service or that, the first question you have to ask them is, number one, do you have a podcast? Like, have you ever done it? Okay. And the second thing you need to ask them is, are you doing it full time? Is this what you do for a living? Chances are the answers to both those questions are going to be a big resounding no. Most of the people giving advice to you on podcasts either aren't podcasters or aren't established, successful podcasters. But everybody knows everything. Every group you're in, everybody knows everything. and every time you have a question, you're going to get 50 people who are all like, this is what you do. Look, you're going to get advice everywhere you turn. In the end, the decision is up to you about who you work with, about how you run your podcast. So I want to start with the notion that you are in charge. Nobody else. That means you make the rules. You make the rules about when you post. You make the rules about what you post. You make the rules about your niche. And my goodness, I hate that word. It just sounds so like pinky up in the air type of talk, Oh, your niche. I mean, when I grew up, it was a niche. So, but people are always going to tell you, oh, well, you have to niche down and be real specific. And then, folks are like, well, does that mean I can't talk about anything else? No, it's your podcast. You can do whatever you want with it. I'm working with a young guy who's got a podcast that centers around the idea of having a good mindset. Well, does that mean you can't talk about confidence? Does that mean you can't talk about positive thinking? Does that mean you can't talk about physical training that helps your mindset? Does that mean he can't talk to a therapist about relationships, which, frankly, I'm sorry, impacts your mindset huge and also can be impacted by the mindset you have in the relationship? I mean, you see where I'm going. Don't let somebody else dictate what you talk about, who you talk to, when you talk to them, and how you do your job. This is one of the most beautiful professions in the entire world because it is all about you. Your podcast itself and should be a direct reflection of you, whoever it is that you are. I mean, if you're sitting there doing a podcast on neurodivergence, in teenagers, and you've never had a neurodivergent teen, and you've never experienced being with one, and you've never known one, then what in the world are you doing having a podcast about that? Are you reading a book into a mic? It's like, a 20-year-old guy trying to tell everybody, how to be a strong father when he's never had any kids. It's a little empty. It's a little hard to fathom. Somebody's talking about how to cook fantastic dishes and they've never cooked a day in their lives. You guys get the idea. Your podcast should be something you're interested in, something you have some sort of not training necessarily, although if you have training in it, great, but at least experience or um, passion for, so that you're going to be deeply interested in your topic. I work with a couple of guys who do an anime podcast, and I mean these guys know everything there is to know about anime. And who does what voice and what character was in what show this was and when it came out and how the art changed and the methods changed. And I mean I'm every time I meet with these guys, I'm fascinated by what they know. And frankly, I've kind of become a fan just by working with these guys because they have such a passion for what they're doing. Most of you folks qualify under these circumstances. But even then, we still let people tell us, well, get more specific, niche down, do this, do that. Let me tell you why so many coaches are going to tell you to niche way down. It's because normally when you hire a coach, you pay them up front, you pay them a good sum of money, they work with you, they show you some things. And if it fails, what's the first thing they're going to say? Are they going to say, oh, I didn't tell you the right thing to do? Are they going to say, I messed up? Here's your money back? No. They're going to say, oh, well, maybe it's the niche. Anyway, moving on. Like I said, we're just having a conversation this morning. Another thing I want to talk to you guys about is, when you publish, because in terms of being a better podcaster, everybody thinks, oh, I've got to be consistent. I've got to hit it no matter what. I got to get my episodes out. This is true. If you are consistent, it helps you. If you're putting out 2 episodes a week instead of one, it helps you. It's more coverage. It's more publishing. It's more production. It's more content. If you put out 3 instead of, 2, it helps you all the way around. And there are a ton of strategies on how to work all that, make it work for you. But the fact of the matter is that if you're having some trouble, if you're burned out, if your personal life has fallen down around your ears, if your job, your day job just went sideways on you and you can't get an episode out, then you know what? You can't get an episode out. You have to take care of you because the podcast is an extension of you. And what I recommend in those cases, if you don't have a bank of interviews lined up where, hey, this person didn't show up, so now I can push this interview in there. If you don't have anything in reserve and someone cancels on you, for instance, and you don't have an episode, repeat one of your old ones, especially if you're like over 50 episodes into it. I was talking to somebody the other day who had 80 episodes, and they said, yeah, I just couldn't get this episode together. My mind wasn't right. I have too much going on. I mean, believe me, I understand that. And what I told them was, well, run one of your real old ones. If you're in the 80s right now, run episode 6 or something, and just let everybody know. And the response to me, a very innocent response was, well, I didn't think you could do that. This is what I mean. So let me give you my stance on that too, because in terms of being a better podcaster, of course, nobody wants to have to repeat an episode. When you do repeat an episode, though, and you put an additional number on it, people think, oh, well, now I'm cheating with my number of episodes. Folks, no, you're not. Okay, just put it in its sequence and change the write up on it. And the very first word in your write up should be, repeat or encore in parentheses. I've done this 100 times, not 100 times, but plenty of times over the years when I've had to or when I've wanted to. And there are times when I've said, hey, this is an appropriate episode that I did a long time ago. I'm going to repeat it. And we're going to get this out right now. If you're good at editing, you can even do a quick little, thing at the beginning saying, hey, this is a repeat, but here's why I'm putting this episode out again, folks. Because everything going on in the world, or this just happened, or, this is why it's relevant. Please enjoy this episode again if you haven't heard it. If you've heard it, please enjoy it again. If you haven't heard it yet, I hope you find some value in it. And then run the episode. Very, very simple. Now, people will sit there and go, well, that's not fair. You can't do that. Folks, if you have 80 episodes and you've been putting out one a week, you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, a year and a half at least. Do you really think that everyone who's listened to your podcast today has heard every single episode you put out all the way back to episode 1? Of course they haven't. None of us have time to go back and listen to every episode. If I start listening to Joe Rogan today, am I going to, I'm going to catch the most recent episode, of course. And then I might go back and listen to some old stuff, but am I really going to listen to every single episode the guy's ever put out since he started? Of course not. Number one, it's not relevant necessarily. And number two, who has time for that? I barely have time to listen to the current podcast that I really love. And I still have people say, well, that's a cheat. You shouldn't do that. Well, is it perfect? No. But let me tell you a quick story because we are sitting here just drinking coffee together. Years ago, I came up with a Halloween episode for my podcast called The Power of Man. And the name of the episode is The Mutt That Stole Halloween. Now, think of that as you may, but I lay out some very serious and yet somewhat comical do's and don'ts on Halloween. And in the episode, I say, look, if you're one of the people out there doing this on Halloween, you're a mutt. That might sound a little harsh. I don't know. Maybe you like that. Maybe you don't. I would encourage every one of you to go listen to it because I think it's hilarious. But the point is that it was one of my highest downloaded and liked episodes when I put it out at the time. So the following year, Halloween comes around again. And I said, boy, how am I going to top the mutt that stole Halloween? Because I've said all the things that I really feel in my heart, in my gut about Halloween. And I said, you know what? I'm going to just run that episode again. And I did. I ran it again. I put a new sequential number on it. And I wrote in the, show notes, folks, this is a repeat of last year's. If you, caught it, please listen to it again. I bet it hit you a little different. If you didn't catch it last year, catch it now. We more than doubled the downloads on that episode that year. The third year I put it up, I didn't mince any words. I knew going into the Halloween season that's exactly what I was going to do. I put that episode up. I put the appropriate notation on it so everybody knew it was a repeat. No one was surprised. And it blew the doors off. It is one of my most famous episodes. I get comments on it every Halloween. Every Halloween now, I get at least 20 to 30 DMs of people going, "Are you going to run the Halloween episode? You're running the Halloween episode?" I've heard stories from people who have, messaged me or posted on Facebook or on Instagram how they've listened to that with their family and their kids were just dying. I've had people who are taking pictures of folks out in the street going, "Mutt right here," and sending it to my Instagram. I mean, folks, it's your podcast. Do what you want. This repeat that I put up every year, as long as I have this podcast, I'm going to put that repeat of that episode up. I mean, this is year five, and it'll be, I guess, maybe even year six, depending on how the calendar rotates. Or we put it up again this year. I got to check and see how many times I've run that thing. But I'm going to keep running that episode and reloading that episode and moving on and moving on and moving on because it's a great episode. And I love it and people love it. What else are you going to do? So I hope that that kind of answers the question about, what happens if? Because look, people do not show up for your interview. I've talked to a lot of folks lately who have just had a crazy number of people just no show. I don't know where the total lack of courtesy is coming from folks, but I mean, just no show, no call, no nothing. Just see you later. And you're sitting there on Zoom, just waiting, waiting. You hear the Jeopardy theme in the background, da, 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 da. And you're like, well, nobody's coming. And then half the time, either they give you some, nonsense excuse about how, somebody had a heart attack, or they come back and they say, well, they ghost you and you don't even hear from them. So it happens to everybody. And if you're struggling to put out content and you're working a day job and you've got a family or, anything else that's dragging on your time, you don't always get a chance to have something in backup. And frankly, there's just no reason to not have an episode. And the last thing I'll say about the episode thing is this. Think for a minute about you listening to your favorite podcast. Think about, especially if you're a little older, think about how we used to watch TV. I'd be sitting there and I'd be watching my favorite show each week. Maybe it was MacGyver, okay? And I'd get ready and I'd tune in and I'd be sitting there, and have my snack, right? My drink and everything, and be ready to watch my show. And it comes on the TV and it's a rerun. And you're like, oh man, it's a rerun. No, you're a little disappointed because it's a rerun, okay? But I can't tell you how many times I just sat and watched it anyway because it's my favorite show. Now, if I would have done all that and tuned in and, clicked, and then on the TV there was no program, nothing, just darkness and silence, then I'd be going, what in the world happened? There's no show. I mean, did they quit? Did something happen? Are they still doing it? Your mind runs away. It is a much bigger deal to your listener if there's no show than if it's a repeat or an encore. Those are my thoughts. I hope that it helps some of you to maybe relax a little bit. In a perfect world, and what I'd love to see for every one of you guys is that you establish when your show is going to come out and you stick to that schedule as much as possible. And when life gets to you and you need some time off, or someone no shows and you don't have an episode, or whatever happens to you, you take care of yourself, you take care of your body, your mind, and your soul, and you run a repeat and let it go and come back stronger and ready to go. I hope that that helps break down one of those walls while we're sitting here talking, having coffee. The final thing that I'll bring up during our little conversation here, in the final little nudge of being a better podcaster, is in terms of who you are. Folks, be you. You don't need to be the perfect professional. You don't need to be hip or cool if you're not. You don't need to be something that you aren't. There are podcasters that I'm sure you look up to, would love to follow their footsteps, right? Folks that we even copy a little bit, you know, and that's fine. But you don't want to try to be them. When you're on this side of the mic, one of the things that has helped me grow to the point that I'm at, and one of the things that has helped me transform my business into something that is, a very nice full-time living, is the fact that everybody knows who I am. And it doesn't work for everybody. I mean, hey, there's plenty of folks who are like, yeah, I can't stand that guy. That's fine. I've had people actually tell me, you are so annoying on your podcast. Well, okay. Why are you listening to it then, brother? You know, but I mean, look, I'm me. I'm the same me, for instance, on the Podcaster Nation. If you look at just this podcast alone and you go back to episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, any of those, and you listen to me talking to any of the podcasters that I'm speaking with, I'm the same guy then that I am in episode 66. And I'm going to be the same guy in episode 150. Because when I get on my podcast, I know what I want to do and I know why I want to do it. And I accept the fact that I'm in charge of this. When I created the Podcaster Nation, I wanted to come out here and I wanted to give you folks, the podcasters, a platform to tell everybody, this is me. This is who I am and this is what I'm actually about. This is why I started my podcast, sort of the story behind what I'm doing. Because I wanted you to be able to get that out there. I wanted you folks to be able to connect with your audience. And I wanted your audience to hear why you're doing the podcast you're doing. Why does it matter so much to you? Because when our listeners know why our topics and our subjects matter to us, and when they find out how important our topics are to us, it becomes that much more important to them. They gain a whole new appreciation for you as the podcaster, for the show itself, for the subject matter and the content. They understand. I had one of my own guests tell me that he's been listening to me for years, on the podcast, and that he listens to me every night when he's at work. And he said, Rory, I feel like I know you. I feel like you and I are friends. Because honestly, you and I basically, we talk every single night, when I'm listening to your episodes. And hearing that, obviously, that was a huge compliment, one of the biggest I've ever received from anybody. I was grateful beyond words for that. But by the same token, it made me think about how I listen to podcasts. And I feel the same way. When I'm listening to a podcast that I really love, I feel like I know the person. I refer to them by their first name. When they're not on, I miss them. you know, because I appreciate them. And folks, that's what your audience does with you. But they can only do that if you bring down the curtain. And when you're sitting in the host's chair, like I am right now, it's really difficult to let down that curtain, to take down that wall and let people in to who's really sitting here. Because, look, let's be honest, you got a show you got to manage. You got another guest over there and you got to tell their story. But folks want to know you. And so I was sitting there with my wife one night and I said, you know what? There's nothing. There's no show. There's nothing out there that's for podcasters. And my wife said, are you sure? Because it seems like that's something that should be there. We looked around, we looked around. There's nothing. There's nothing like what we do. And that's why the response has been as huge as it has to getting people on this podcast and telling their stories. And so for every one of you who has come on here and opened up and told your story about who you are and why you do the podcast you do, I just want to thank you. And I've heard a lot of stories from a lot of you about how this helped boost you, in certain areas. I had one gentleman who was on who said that within a couple of days of sharing our interview on the Podcaster Nation, it was like he had instant credibility with people. They were going, I knew you had like a podcast, but I didn't realize it was like a real, like you're really a podcaster. Like this is a real thing. People think it's just some hobby. Then they see you get interviewed on the Podcaster Nation talking about it, and they go, oh my gosh, this guy's real. This is a real thing. Hey, tell me more about this. That's why we do what we do over here. That's why I do what I do. And nobody comes on this show surprised about who I am or what I'm going to say to them, unless I get their name wrong, which has happened once. But, it's just one of those things, folks, where you have to be you. You just simply have to be you. So I encourage all of you to take another sip of coffee here. There we go. And go on about your day and just take these few little words of wisdom that I've gained over a lot of years, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of scars. Just take some of this advice and try to apply it to your own life, to your own podcast, to your own thing. We're going to have more series like this coming out where we're going to talk much more in depth about a lot of different topics having to do with podcasting. But this first one, I just wanted to cover in these three parts. So I hope that you enjoyed them and that you get something of value out of one of these three episodes. And if you haven't heard the first two, please go back and listen. If you're a podcaster, something in these three episodes will help you, I'm sure. And I would love to hear what that is. So contact me, give me a yell. Rory Paquette at gmail.com. Simple, simple, simple. Rory Paquette on Facebook. Look us up. We're there. The Podcaster Nation on Facebook. Come check us out there too. Folks, this is the podcast that is about podcasters. It's for podcasters and it's done by podcasters. This is the place where we all come together and we lift each other up. And today we even got to just kind of sit back and have a cup of coffee together. Folks, this is the one place that's out there where the rising tide really does raise all ships. So keep sailing.